Hello, my name is Andri Snær Magnason, and I'm going to read for you from my book, The Story of the Blue Planet, published in Icelandic first, English, and available in 30 other languages. So I will start from the beginning. There was a blue planet. Once upon a time, there was a blue planet far out in space. At first sight, it looked like a very ordinary blue planet, and it's unlikely that an astrologist or astronaut would ever have given it a second glance. A sun and a moon circled the planet once every day, and wind swayed the grass and flowers, while waterfalls tumbled from high mountains into deep, dark canyons. Clouds were blown across the sky, and stars twinkled behind them. The planet was covered with lands, and around each land was an ocean that could be as calm as a mirror until it was caught by the roaring waves and smashed into 1,000 drops on rocky shores. The blue planet was very special for one reason. Only children lived there. Plants and animals lived there, of course, too, but all around the planet were children in all shapes and sizes. Big children, small children, chubby children, and skinny children. And some were even weird, like the child you see in the mirror. There were many more than 100 of them, so let's just say they were countless. The children were completely free to do what they pleased, since no grown-ups lived on the planet, and there was no one to order them around. The wild children ate when they were hungry, slept when they got tired, and in between they played without anyone interfering. These words are not meant to criticize grown-ups. Many of them are actually quite nice. The blue planet was beautiful, but it was also a dangerous place. Each day was so full of danger and excitement that no grown-ups could have lived there without getting gray hair and withering away from stress and worry. That's why no grown-up had landed on the planet for as long as the youngest child could remember, and astronomers wouldn't dare point their telescopes towards the blue planet. Now someone might ask, where did the children come from? How did they multiply? Did they never grow up? How were they born if there were no grown-ups on the planet? The answer is simple. Nobody knows. As I said, scientists were not interested in the planet, and no research had been done on it. We only know that it was full of children that never grew up. For some unknown reason, the well of youth in their hearts seemed limitless, and in fact, the children could easily have been many hundreds of years old. The children had endless adventures on the blue planet. They could follow fireflies in the dark or climb rocky cliffs and jump into warm waters. They could gather shells on the beach and watch the sea turtles crawl ashore to lay their eggs. There were high cliffs full of nesting birds and cold white glaciers that crawled into the sea, crunching and crumbling. The forests were light green during the day when the tigers and parrots were about, but they turned dark green in the evening when the wolves began howling, and black green at night when the bats awoke and spiders with hairy legs wove their webs between branches. Once a year, an incredible event took place on the blue planet. A ray of light would burst through a little hole in the wall of a cave in the Blue Mountains. This was no ordinary cave. It was full of sleeping butterflies. As the light flooded the cave and shone on their wings, something wonderful happened. The butterflies awoke from their sleep. Very slowly and calmly, they moved their wings and then rose in the air, one by one, and flew out of the mouth of the cave. They followed the sun for a whole day, circling the planet over land and sea, mountains and valleys, before fluttering back into the cave and falling asleep again, not to awaken until another year had passed. The flight of the butterflies was the greatest wonder on the blue planet and a day of true happiness. The children would lie on their backs and watch the butterflies fill the sky until they disappeared with the sun beyond the horizon. But all these wonders cannot compare with the adventure this story has to tell. Here comes the most dangerous and incredible adventure any child on the blue planet could ever have imagined. The saga begins on a little island in a deep ocean shortly before the annual awakening of the butterflies. It was a bright summer's day, and Brimir was wandering along a black sandy beach, collecting seashells and skimming the ocean with flat stones. He walked slowly through the penguin nesting grounds, zigzagging through the crowd, taking special care not to step on any eggs. Brimir was going to show his friend Hulda a beautiful stone he had found near the Blue Mountains. Only a glimpse of his head could be seen, as a lock of his yellow hair stood out among the black and white flock of penguins. His tummy was grumbling because he had completely forgotten to eat on his hike. He looked at the delicious eggs under the penguins' bottoms, and his mouth watered. But when he caught their nasty looks, he decided to let them be. After all, he was alone against thousands of them. He had a sharp mind, but their beaks were sharper. Brimir saw Hulda dragging a large sack and ran over to her. "Hi," said Brimir. "What's in the sack?" "Just a seal." "Just a seal?" "Yes, just one seal, but also oranges and 2 rabbits," said Hulda. Did you catch a seal?" said Brimir. "Oh, it was no big deal, it was so small. I knocked it out with a club," said Hulda, as she tapped Brimir lightly on his head. "Can I help you pull the sack?" said Brimir. "That would be nice," said Hulda. Brimir and Hulda strolled along the beach, dragging the sack behind them, wiping out the tracks in the sand. They looked out over the sea and the black sand in the bay with the palm trees where they were going to skin and cook the seal. They collected logs, lit a fire, and grilled the seal in one piece. When they had eaten their fill, they sat in the sand and watched the sunset. Then they lay on their backs and watched the stars grow brighter as the darkness grew blacker. "I think this was the best and most beautiful day of my life," whispered Hulda. "Yes, it's even better than the second best day I've ever lived, which was yesterday," said Brimir. "What did you do yesterday?" "Nothing special. I just felt so happy," said Brimir, smiling. "Life keeps getting better and better." "And the butterflies are coming soon," said Hulda, glowing with happiness. Brimir showed Hulda the stone he found, how it glittered like 1,000 rainbows, like 1,000,000 stars. "It's beautiful." "You can have it," said Brimir. "No, I don't want it," said Hulda. "It's too beautiful." "Really, I want you to have it," said Brimir. Knowing in her heart that it's a greater blessing to give than to receive, Hulda accepted the stone to please Brimir. "What kind of stone is it?" "I think it's a wishing stone," said Brimir. "Can I make a wish?" asked Hulda. "Yes, if you want to," replied Brimir, "but then the stone changes into an ordinary pebble." "Do I only get one wish?" "Yes, but you can make whatever wish you like." Hulda was silent. She thought things over, racked her brains, and let her mind wander. "I really can't think of anything to wish for." "Nothing?" asked Brimir. "I have enough to eat, and I have many friends, because everybody's my friend. But there's always been one wish I've had," said Hulda. "And what's that?" "I've always wished that my best friend would give me an amazingly beautiful wishing stone. And now my wish has come true, so I can't think of anything else to wish for." Hulda smiled shyly, kissed Brimir quickly on the cheek, and held the stone carefully, like a sparrow's egg. "That's a really strange star," said Brimir suddenly. "Where?" asked Hulda. "There," shouted Brimir. "There shouldn't be a star there," said Hulda, and rubbed her eyes. But the star was not motionless in space. It zoomed about with a large tail of fire, sometimes twisting and turning as it drew glowing letters of fire in the sky. "It's making letters in the air," said Brimir. "LETTHEREBEFUN," spelled out Hulda. "Let there be fun. What kind of falling star is that?" The star suddenly stopped making circles in the air, and now it was heading straight for the blue planet. A horrendous roar could be heard that became louder and louder. Brimir and Hulda clung to each other. Oh no, is it an asteroid or a comet? It's a space rocket, and it's going to crash. The space rocket approached with increasing speed, and everything around them became blindingly bright. The birds in the trees flew away squeaking, squirrels crawled into rabbit holes, fish hid in seaweed forests. Hulda shouted, "It's heading straight for us. We'll be crushed." "Hold me tight," whispered Brimir. Hulda held on to Brimir so tightly she almost crushed him. Then came a tremendous explosion. Bang! The explosion echoed between the mountains, while sand and rocks rained all over the beach. Brimir and Hulda remained perfectly still, with their ears ringing. A deep crater had been formed where the space rocket had crashed. They walked slowly to the crater's edge and peeked over. Hardly anything could be seen because of the smoke, but they caught a glint of a glowing, battered, shapeless wreck at the bottom. "It's just like an old vacuum cleaner," said Hulda. "It's a spaceship," whispered Brimir. There was no sign of life in the spaceship, but then a low knocking sound could be heard. Bang, wham, thump, as if someone was trying to break open the door of the rocket. "No one's come here from out of space for ages," said Hulda. The door continued to be struck, now much harder than before. Bang, wham, thump. "I hope it's not a space monster," whispered Brimir. Then a dreadful roar could be heard, and the door was struck with full force. It fell open with a loud crash, and a gigantic, dark creature appeared in the doorway. It stared out into the darkness. The space monster. Brimir and Hulda ran through the night as fast as their legs could carry them to let their friends know about the space monster. Their only light was from the moon, which sometimes disappeared behind a cloud or a palm tree. They ran over meadows and through forests and along the river and over the desert. All the time they were shouting and calling, "Beware of the space monster! A space monster's arrived!" The children woke up and shouted terrified out into the darkness. "Where's the space monster? It's down on the beach with a black sun. Run, hide." "What does a space monster look like?" some of the children asked. "I think it was black," shouted Hulda, and she kept on running. "Yes, it was black and hairy with 4 heads, and its teeth were sharper than knives," called Brimir. "Bread knives or meat knives," called out Arnar the thinker. "We're not sure. The space monster was really just very dark," cried Hulda, pulling Brimir on behind her. And before they were out of sight, they shouted to the kids, "Don't go near to the black beach." The news spread through the forest that night like wildfire and lit up fear in every heart. All the children had heard about the monster, but few of them knew what it looked like. Some of them said it was dark with hairs and it could swallow whole planets with forests and lakes and all the animals in one big mouthful. Others said it had 10 heads and 18 eyes with X-ray vision to see through mountains. They all imagined the horror of disappearing into the stomach of such a monster and being crushed in its smelly and slimy guts. Brimir and Hulda, exhausted after the running, fell asleep in a glade under a sweet-scented pine tree. Hulda was awoken by a terrible cry from Brimir. "Oh, I had such a horrible nightmare," said Brimir. "The space monster replaced our hearts with lots of feathers, which tickled so much that I couldn't stop laughing when the monster ate me and chewed me 100 times because the mother monster had taught it to chew its food very well. And finally, when the monster swallowed me, its belly was full of jellyfish jam. And you know how I hate jellyfish." Hulda shook her head. "You and your crazy mixed up dreams." "I think we've slept too long," said Brimir, rubbing his eyes. "Let's find the others before the monster eats us all." The children walked for a long, long time through the forest. It was by now a bright sunny day, but there wasn't a single child in sight. There were no children by the river or up on the hills. There was no child in the valley or under the mountain. Brimir and Hulda shouted and called, but nobody answered except the monkeys in the trees and the rustling leaves. I think the monster's already eaten our friends, whimpered Brimir. I'll find the club I used to knock out the seal, said Hulda, and I'll knock out the space monster, she said. Hulda swung her club and almost knocked out Brimir. They crept down to the black sandy beach where they heard a frightful noise. Hush, Hulda, what's that sound? Is that the sound a space monster makes when it cracks open skulls and sucks out the brains? Oh, it sounds more like laughter to me, said Hulda. Oh no, shouted Brimir. That means there isn't just one space monster, but a whole bunch of horrible laughing space monsters, more dangerous than all the wolves and all the lions and all the poisonous snakes put together. They crawled, trembling on hands and knees, up to the ridge of the crater and looked down to where the spaceship had crashed. An unbelievable sight awaited them. Mr. Goodday. What's that? Asked Brimir, amazed. The monster is like an overgrown child, said Hulda, catching her breath. I think I know what it is, said Brimir. It could be a grown-up. They're supposed to be gigantic. This grown-up man also appeared to be hilarious, for all around him sat most of their friends, laughing their heads off. They were all looking at this amazing creature sitting on top of a twisted space rocket. He was wearing a Hawaiian shirt with a grey briefcase in his hand. He certainly did not look like a space monster. Are grown-ups dangerous? Asked Brimir. Some of them are very dangerous, but this one just seems to be very funny, said Hulda. Brimir and Hulda breathed easier, but still looked a little embarrassed. The extremely dangerous space monster was just a very funny man. They crept down into the crater to join the children. Brimir sat by his friend Magni, who was bursting with laughter. Who is he? Asked Brimir. Shh, just listen. Hello, kids. My name is Gleesome Goodday, and I'm the most way out guy in the world. And I can do anything, let me tell you, because I'm the coolest man who has ever set foot on this blue planet. Mr. Goodday handed out his card among the children. Gleesome Goodday, Stardust vacuum cleaner, traveling salesman, but chiefly dream come true maker and joy bringer. A dream come true maker? A Stardust vacuum cleaner traveling salesman? Wow, that's a weird job, said Hulda. You are also unbelievably lucky to have been chosen for a special offer, cried Mr. Goodday. I am going to make your sweetest dreams come true. Are dreams not true? Asked Arnar, the thinker. When you fall asleep at night, the dreams wake up. They crawl through your ears like little bugs and walk inside your brain and tell you strange stories all night. Sometimes the stories are so amusing that you don't want to wake up. Sometimes they are so terrifying that you'd rather never fall asleep again. I know how to make your dreams come true. Are you sure that dreams can come true? Asked Brimir. Mine are so weird. The children looked at Brimir and laughed. He had often told them of his dreams in the morning, and they were truly amazing. Like the dream of the flying penguins and the nightmare about the screaming trees, said Hulda and laughed. Mr. Goodday looked over the group of children and smiled. What's your name, young man? My name is Brimir, said Brimir. Well, what are we waiting for, Brimir? I'll start by changing you into a flying penguin. Mr. Goodday turned to Brimir and waved his arms around. Dream-a-cadabra, a flying penguin you shall be. The children watched in amazement while Brimir closed his eyes and waited for whatever would happen. But Mr. Goodday just laughed and did a reverse somersault off the spaceship. I was just joking. I make your most wildest dreams come true, not your weirdest, and so make life 100 times better. The kids giggled. Do you want to make life better? And then you're really on the wrong planet. We think life is great. It can't get any better. Let's see, said Mr. Goodday. What's the greatest fun you can think of? Magni answered first. When the moon is full, I go to the high cliffs with my bird net and listen to the wind and the waves. I sit on the edge of the cliff and wait for the bats to crawl out of their holes and glide around in the moonlight and suck the blood out of the seals sleeping on the rocks below. Then I catch a few bats with my net and roast them on a fire and make hats from their wings. I like climbing on the top of mountains and looking out over the land, but I most want to climb the blue mountains, said Ragnar, and looked dreamingly into the distance. When the rain pours down from the sky, we can swing through the trees and jump down into muddy puddles, and when I'm splattered up to my neck, I can go and wash myself clean in the misty spray from the waterfall, said Eva. And so the children continued, and on, until they heard a tremendous yawn. It was from Mr. Goodday. Oh, I do beg your pardon, dear kids, but this was all so dreadfully dull and boring that I almost fell asleep. Don't you really know how to have a good time? The children looked at each other in surprise. But that is having a good time. Yeah, we think so. No, I'm talking about real fun and games, said Mr. Goodday. Oh dear, you're all so horribly underdeveloped. There was a silence for a little while, and then suddenly Hulda lit up. We forgot the most and best thing of all, guys. When the butterflies wake up in the cave and follow the sun. That's real fun because it's the most beautiful thing that ever happens in the world. After the flight of the butterflies, we're so happy that our happiness lasts a whole year, right until the butterflies fly again. Then we're out of this world with joy. Mr. Goodday yawned again. What do you know of this world? Okay, so there are beautiful butterflies, fine, but I can show you things much cooler and even more fun than all of what you've said put together at a special terms, special offer price with a sales discount. Cooler and more fun than butterflies, asked the kids. At a special terms, special offer price. Yes, that's right, with a sales discount. But nothing costs anything here, said Magni. I'm quite sure you'll want to pay for this, said Mr. Goodday, smiling over the group. He looked straight into the eyes of every single child. Don't you want to fly? Free as birds, light as a butterfly?